you. All right, so why should fire districts matter to us? We hope to know a little bit more about that topic and answer that question. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Curt Bennet, who is a longtime District 4 Fire District Commissioner and I believe a very, very long time resident of Mason County. And we're just so happy to have him here today. So,
Amy,
Curt,
happy to be here.
Wonderful.
So, like Amy said, I've been a fire commissioner for a long while, 26 years now. I kind of fell into it accidentally, but I found it was something I really got passionate about. It does good work for our citizens. Amy mentioned I was a longtime resident. Yeah, I'm 5th generation here in Mason County. Goes back a long ways. So I have some questions from you guys, and I'll start in on answering some of these. And feel free to break in at any time with questions. And the first question I have is, how did we become organized as numerous fire districts? Well, cities have had fire departments for a long, long time. Back in horse and buggy days, they had their fire brigades, and so it was common for all cities to have a fire department of sorts. I remember as a child playing downtown, Shelton had a horse-drawn, steam-powered fire engine kind of set back away down at the shop area. I don't know what happened to it, but it's gone now. So, long history of fire departments in cities, but rural areas didn't have anything other than your nearest neighbor might help you out if you had a problem. So in 1941, the state legislature, at the urging of some small communities, enacted a law enabling fire districts to be formed in Washington state. The earliest that I can come up with for a fire district in Mason County is 3 of them formed in 1948. The first one being Hoodsport, the second one Belfair, and the third one at Grapeview. Our fire district 4 formed in 1950, and we're the south end of the county. We initially were just a very small area, and we annexed some other areas like Camilchi later on, but we've been around for a long time. The reason why there were so many districts, 18 altogether plus the city of Shelton, is because we had no dispatch system until probably late 50s, early 60s. We didn't have a dispatch system, so communities relied on their telephone system, which was kind of crude, party lines and all. They had a phone tree to call out the volunteers to, come to their aid if they happened to be near a telephone at the time. So that's the genesis of our multiple fire districts, as they were all very small community-based groups of volunteers. As time moved on, we eventually got radio dispatch system, and it was one guy, Sam Ebinger, in the Shelton Police Department downtown, that was doing radio dispatch. And he was primarily for police, but he would dispatch some fire departments that had had little pagers that would have a tone go off. When your tone went off, then you would know to report to the station and go help somebody. So
Curt, I'm sorry, I do mean here, but what was the date of that? Where are we now?
of the dispatch system,
Yeah,
I don't know the exact date. I did some research. I was looking for it, and I'm going to say late 50s, early 60s.
okay, thanks.
Prior to that, you know, the Shelton Police Department, they had people walking a beat downtown, and there were call-in boxes in the downtown core area. And if they were to be reached or to reach back to the department, they had to walk to the call box and call in. Of course, you know, things like ringing a bell at the fire department, that sort of thing was a call to action as well. So radio communications really changed the face of the fire department, because we could reach out beyond our little tiny small community areas. In 1959, emergency medical services were authorized for fire departments, because we had these people sitting around fire stations in cities without a lot of work to do. And somebody came up with a good idea. And at the forefront of this was Seattle Medic One. Nationwide, Seattle Medic One was one of the very first people to promote this, which is kind of interesting. There's also another one in Maryland at nearly the same time, and a couple others nationally. So we got EMS added in 1959, and that currently makes up about 85% of the work that fire departments do is EMS. Yeah, it's a lot. Well, as building codes came about, houses were less likely to burn. In the old days, without building codes, there wasn't really too much thought put to keeping houses safe, and most everything was wood fired, and houses were not terribly well insulated, and fires happen. My family lived out at Matlock for a number of years, and in 1902 they had a big fire out there, and they got burned out completely. They lost everything, had to move in with the in-laws in at Dayton. So fires used to happen a lot, and they started happening less because of better building codes. So another question we have here is how are fire districts funded and who oversees them? So fire districts are funded by property taxes, property levies. There's an EMS levy and a fire levy tax. The fire levy tax has been amended over the years. It used to be a smaller amount. It's now up to as much as $1.50 per $1,000 of evaluation. In addition, we have an emergency medical services tax of up to 50 cents. There are requirements for the districts to be able to levy those amounts. We have to ask the voters for an increase because we are limited by one of Tim Iman's initiatives to a 1% budget increase each year, which of course we fall behind due to inflation. So we ask for a levy lid lift because, for example, if we had $1.50 of taxable authority, and the following year property values go up, but we can only get 1% more money than we did the previous year, then our tax levy rate goes down. For example, it could go down to $1.40. Each year as things go on and property values increase and we're limited to the 1%, our levy rate goes down. When it gets low enough, then we ask for a lid lift, which we did just this very year, and we were successful in getting a lid lift and got our revenue back up to $1.50. Then it will start declining again. Second part of the question is oversight. Who oversees the fire districts? Each fire district is a municipal corporation with a minimum of 3 commissioners elected by the public to administer the district. We are not under the Mason County Commissioners at all. We are our own authority with the ability to levy taxes. We do, however, have a lot of oversight in that we have to follow all the rules of a lot of different RCWs here. We have an Open Public Meetings Act, which is a real big one. We have local government whistleblower protection, the Public Records Act, minimum wage laws, medical leave, family leave, discrimination laws, HIPAA laws regarding medical records, and of course, the state auditor's office. The state auditor's office is probably the one that mostly fits the definition of oversight, because they come in every 3 years and go through our books and our minutes and records and look to see that we are complying with the procedures of our district and state law. When they come in, they cannot look at absolutely everything. There's just too much to look at. So if they have heard of any issues, then they focus on those areas. We have a pre-audit conference with the auditor, and they might talk to some of the staff and some of the commissioners and see if we have any concerns about anything. If not, then they just find their own way and decide what they're going to look at. We in District 4 have been real fortunate with our audits, and that we appear to be doing a good job of managing the public's funds, and haven't had any findings for as long as I've been a commissioner, and none that I know of before then. So we're doing okay. Not every district in the county can say that, but most of them are doing a pretty good job. So a third question was, how has the organizational structure changed over time, and is it still effective?
Curt, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
We do have a question about the levy. What is negotiated with the Squaxin tribe to cover their 300 plus housing pre-levy lift? It was still pending.
So 16 years ago, we were in negotiations with the tribe. When they were building their casino, they needed to have an agreement in place providing fire service to meet their requirements for insurance and lending and such. And so we entered into some lengthy negotiations with them, and we recognized that we could not tax them as such, but we felt that, they should pay a reasonable share of expenses. And we came up with an agreement that they would pay us some money in lieu of taxes. And not very far into that agreement, it fell apart. We got into a kind of a dispute over commercial property, what constitutes commercial property and what doesn't. And the agreement fell apart. So we felt that since we are legally obligated to serve them, regardless of if they pay us a cent or not, they're still within the bounds of our district. We needed some sort of an agreement. And we got the tribe to build a fire station for us on Old Olympic Highway. That's our Station 4. And they built a nice facility for us there. And we occupy it rent-free. We pay the utilities, but they provide the station for us. It belongs to them. It's their station. And our initial agreement was for 15 years. And we were in negotiations with them, and things got stalled, and an automatic renewal clause kicked in. So it's going for another 5 years. We don't expect to renew under the same terms next time it comes up. Anything else you'd like to know about that?
Okay, I'll wait for a reply somewhere in here. Thank you.
Okay. So a little bit more on that. I attend state conferences with the Washington Fire Commissioners, and there are a number of other fire districts around the state that deal with Indian tribes. And so at each conference, they'll have lawyers speaking, and I'll raise my hand and ask the question, well, what's new about dealing with Indian tribes? And the answer is still, it's all over the place. Nobody has the same agreements at all. Some tribes are quite generous and others are not. And it's just not settled on how to deal with them. You just craft your own agreement. That's all we can do. So as far as organizational structure and how it's changed, it hasn't really changed. Most of the districts in Mason County still have 3 commissioners. We have one regional fire authority up at Belfair. District 2 and District 8 merged to become North Mason Regional Fire Authority. And they currently have 5 commissioners. Other than that, we have had some other mergers where districts have gotten together. Of course, there were originally 18 districts because we had District 1 out at Hoodsport, and the very last one was District 18 up at Lake Cushman. That was the last fire district formed in Mason County. And we have had some mergers. We no longer have District 1 because they merged with 18. So Hoodsport and Cushman are together. Fire District 2, like I mentioned, merged with District 8. to form a regional fire authority. So we have 4, 5, and 6 that are standalone departments. 5 is known as Central Mason. They're the big district. They have a $3 billion evaluation and 27,000 people within their dominion. Fire District 4 is the 3rd largest in Mason County. We'll talk about that later because there's another question about how to access resources for finding out about this. So is the organizational structure still effective? Has it changed? It hasn't really changed other than districts are getting together and combining. 20 years ago, the commissioners of my fire district went to the National Fire Academy in Maryland and did a 2-week course on executive planning, which is a strategic planning and more. And we came away all excited and jacked up, thinking we need to get Mason County to consolidate. And, you know, if we had 2 or 3 districts total, it would be better. Not cheaper, but better. We've never espoused that getting together makes things less expensive. It just provides better service, and that's really what we're about. But we were all jacked up about this, and we came back and we put on a dog and pony show around the county, telling districts our view of why it would be better to get together. And 20 years ago, nobody was very excited about that. There has been a lot more movement towards that in the last few years. So things are changing in that districts are combining. I saw a written question there. Are we still sharing a chief with Griffin Fire Department? And the answer is no. We have recently hired a chief who coincidentally was an assistant chief at Griffin Fire Department. We had our previous fire chief of many years, Bob Burbridge, retire earlier this year because he had another job offer, and it was right and correct for him to move on. And so for a few months, we did share a fire chief with Griffin Fire Department. We border them, even though they're in Thurston County. And Corey Rux did an excellent job of helping us transition. And we're grateful to him for helping us out that way. But we have our own chief now, Greg Rudolph, and we're excited to move forward with his leadership.
Curt, I have a question.
Yes, Linda.
Sorry. So you said that you were all excited about consolidating and you came back from this conference with great ideas.
Yeah.
So who makes that final decision? Wouldn't that be something for the voters to decide eventually?
It absolutely is something for the voters to decide, but the commissioners of the district usually drive that because, you know, the commissioners represent the voters. And if they don't do it, then it would have to be a community group that gets together and wants to do the petitions and put it to the ballot. And not too many, oh, excuse me, something popped on my screen there. Not too many communities are that fired up to want to go to that work and trouble. So go ahead.
Well, I'm going to say when they read the paper and they read about all these scandals you'd think that people would get riled up about making changes. And I think people don't know what to do. They don't know how to make changes.
Well, I can assure you that there will be some changes coming in the far west end of our county, District 12. They're certainly in the news, and there's a lot going on there. I can assure you there will be some changes, and there is an active community group there that is working very hard because, like you said, they got riled up. So there is that avenue, but the way that other consolidations have happened in Mason County is commissioners having the will to see a better way, and they're the ones that push it to move forward. District 12, it might be a little bit different situation. We'll see. So options for moving forward, the consolidations that have been occurring are going to occur more. I'm certain of it. We have a Mason County Fire Commissioners Association that gets together every other month, and we have an opportunity to talk with other commissioners and see how their districts are doing, and if they're interested, in some sort of merger or consolidation. They're not the simplest things to accommodate, or to accomplish rather. You have to get a lawyer involved usually to make sure it's done correctly. Goodbye, Cheryl. Sources of information regarding fire district size, number of calls, budget, educational qualifications. Sources of information, I have access to member resources at the Washington State Fire Commissioners Association, wfca.wa.gov. You could have access to that. It would cost you $30 a year to become an associate member of the Washington Fire Commissioners Association. And then you too would have access to information regarding the fire districts. Your easiest way would be to just ask a friendly fire commissioner like me what you want to know. Let's see. Brenda Hershey, how can citizens find information on performance factors such as response times? So I spoke to Mike Evans, the director of MACECOM, that's our dispatch center, and got some information on number of calls that a district does. So I have that information. He says gathering up response time information is a lot tougher for them to put together. It would take quite an effort for them to come up with a report that has that. He didn't say it was impossible. It's just that in a couple of days, he couldn't come up with that. But I suspect that MACECOM could come up with that information as far as what the response time is. Information on size of districts, valuation, number of calls, area, all that I got from the Washington Fire Commissioners Association. And I just have it scratched out in pen here, but I can probably type that up and email it to you if you want that information, if anybody's interested in it. Okay, Brenda.
I have
said-
another question, Curt. So it seems to me we had someone speak to us a couple years ago about how hard it was getting volunteers. There weren't enough volunteer firemen. How do you find them? And then how do they get trained? And do they ever get paid anything? Volunteering means they're not paid, right?
They're not paid, but there is a small stipend. They get, like $10 a call, and it's essentially and that's district by district, what the stipend might be. But they get a stipend for training and for going to a call. It's usually just a few dollars, intending to make up for, gasoline expenses related to performing the duties. How do we get volunteers? Our best way of getting volunteers is through word of mouth, through people in our fire department, and trying to be a district that makes it easier and more likely. Oh boy, that's a tough one. We try to be attractive. We provide a lot of training for free to the volunteers. But one reason we're having trouble with getting volunteers is because the standards to become a firefighter have gone up dramatically. It requires a lot of hours of training to become a firefighter that can, go out and do the work. Additionally, like I said, 85% of our work is emergency medical services. The training to become an EMT is, once again, a lot of nights and days and hours of training to learn all that. I personally went through emergency medical responder training, which is one layer below EMT, and it's a lot of time. But of course, you're dealing with patients and lives, and it's important that people are well trained. But the amount of training that is required, even to be a volunteer, has gone up dramatically in the last 20 years. So, go ahead.
And wouldn't the equipment, and there was a question in the chat about how equipment prices probably have gone up, and all new kinds of equipment, and like those big trucks. What if the thing won't start in the middle of the night? It's a terrible job, I would think.
Well, the big trucks, we have several, but all districts tend to use their newest, nicest trucks the most because, they're the most attractive and the most reliable trucks we have, the newest ones we have, which of course makes them wear out faster. But the most basic fire truck today starts at about $500,000 and goes on up because they're pretty much custom built. I mean, when we buy a truck, we try to tag on to somebody else's build, that looks like it will fit our needs. But still, they're individually handcrafted. They don't just churn out a bunch of trucks and say, here's what we have. So currently, a fire truck is almost 2 years out. If you ordered one today, after you go through picking out the options you want, it's almost a 2-year wait to get a fire truck. So yeah, there's lots of money involved. Our budget is, a couple $1 million a year. We here in Fire District 4 have 24/7 coverage with paid people, full-time and part-time. Let's see, there's a question.
I have a question.
Okay.
So I live close to the Shelton Fire Station, and I'm amazed at how many runs they make every day. It's quite amazing. But what my question is, why do they send out the big, since mostly medical emergencies, they always send out the big truck too, like there's going to be a fire. And I had a medical emergency one time, and there were 8 firemen in my living room because somebody had called because my back was out. And I thought it was, do they always send out so many people, or is there a rule on that?
Okay, the rule is when somebody is having an emergency, the dispatch does not always know exactly who is available. So they tend to send everybody. And as far as going with the big trucks, most everybody in the fire service is dually trained as fire and EMS. And if they send their fire people out in, say, just an ambulance or an aid car, and a fire occurs, then they have to leave that emergency, go back, get the truck. It's better to keep the crews with the vehicles. Also, being started often and operated often, they are more likely going to be reliable and start each time.
That doesn't seem very cost effective, though, if you're always sending out the big truck.
It isn't cost effective, but it is effective in getting resources to people in the best way. This is not a new question.
I would imagine not.
Yeah. Yeah, a good friend of mine was kind of appalled at how many people showed up to his minor emergency. Well, we send as many people as we can because we're not sure who all is going to show up. Every once in a while, well, we have almost 25% of our calls in Fire District 4 are overlapping calls. So we've sent somebody off to an emergency, and then another call comes in at the same time or just minutes later. And it's all juggling balls, and we don't always know who is available, you know, how soon they can leave their original emergency to go off to another one. So sometimes we end up with a lot of people going. Sometimes it's only 1 or 2 people.
So there's another question in the chat. The trend was moving toward a paid department. Is that still being promoted?
A paid department requires a certain amount of budget. And until you rise to that level of budget, which Fire District 4 just recently did. I mean, it's only been in the last 5 years that we've really had enough paid people to be effective 24/7. So yeah, we're there in Fire District 4 and North Mason Regional and Central Mason. And recently District 3 has a full-time paid department, but nobody else can afford it.
So would it be more efficient if you combined a few of the smaller ones so that you could afford it? Would that make a difference?
Yes.
And
That's
how
why we want to do that.
And how could the league be maybe active in promoting something like this? Who would we reach out to if we wanted some of these departments to consolidate?
I guess the first point of reference would be to talk to the commissioners of that district.
Mhm.
and say, hey, your neighbors over here, if you got together with them,
Mhm.
things could be better. We are currently talking with neighbors. It's early days yet, but you know, we're looking at it because we see it as the future.
So I'm out in District 16, so probably the most proximate would be District 12. If they were to combine District 12 with District 16 in proximity, would that be feasible?
Yeah, and it's highly likely.
Especially the way things are going now, huh?
Right. But District 16 would then add, let me see here, District 12. District 12 is 176 square miles.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really big with a total population of 1,475. District 16 currently has 92 square miles and population of 3,500. And the valuation is similar in that District 6 or District 12 doesn't have very much money to add to the pot. Huge district, not a lot of population, not much money, but in the interest of good government, I suspect that 12 will fold into 16 in the future. I can't say when. And there's other districts with smaller populations, 1,800, 1,400, 1,500. District 17, which is really remote, it's the very north end of the county, well north of Hoodsport, little sliver along the beach there, 612 people population, 12 square miles. So the first place to start, Amy, would be with the commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of District 12, that's going to sort itself out. So I wouldn't worry too much about them, but I believe you can't pin me to this, but I believe that District 11 out at Island Lake is headed towards combining with Central Mason. I have nothing concrete on that, but that seems to be the trend because the Shelton urban growth area keeps nipping away at them.
Curt, this is really helpful because I think most citizens don't have a clue about what they could do to change them until there's a scandal.
Right. When it hits the fan, then everybody's interested and then it dies down. I mean, we in the past had some rocky times at District 4. We actually had a successful commissioner recall in District 4, and it was a rough time for us. It was making me wonder what the hell I was thinking. But we got through and we're stronger afterwards and have a better understanding. District 4 will eventually combine with other districts, but I can't give you a timeline on that. I don't know. Depends on the willingness of neighbors.
So you're saying the willingness of the other districts to combine?
Yeah.
You would think there'd be some way to publicize that this is a possibility even.
I think we are right now.
Okay.
So, any other questions?
I have a question. Curt, what comes first? The district that, with the district that is asking to join another district, or does a district reach out to another district? What's the beginning of this?
Normally, the beginning is commissioner to commissioner. Say, hey, are you guys interested in getting together? 20 years ago, when we went around the county promoting this, we had a little program we did and explaining the benefits. And at that time, nobody was interested. They were all pretty tribal and protecting their little fiefdoms. And that thinking has changed. It's changed a lot. But normally commissioners would get together and say, hey, we're kind of interested in combining with you in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. Regional fire authorities, annexations, consolidations, and mergers, and they all have their different little laws regarding it. So the normal first step, Brenda, would be commissioners to commissioners.
So do you think the regional fire district is the most efficient, or would be the most efficient?
I haven't made up my mind on that, Amy.
Oh, okay.
Because there are so many different ways of doing it. Like Fire District 16, currently, they call themselves West Mason Fire. And I don't know what method they use, but they absorbed Fire District 9, Skokomish Valley, into their district. They are now all one district. And I don't even know what method they used. I know they became West Mason Fire and Rescue, but they are not a regional fire authority like North Mason is. So
you know,
I don't know.
I noticed that their levy so far has not passed. So what will that mean as far as being able to purchase new equipment or hire on new people or do what they need to accomplish?
It means that they might have to lay off some personnel and won't be buying new equipment. And it means that they're going to have to spend some money and run another election with some more information to the voters about why they need it. Elections are tricky. They really are.
Yeah, especially when you have a nearby fire district that appears to be entangled in some scandal.
Yeah.
I don't know if people would be willing to, lift the levy on something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if that had an effect on it or not. There was a question that came in on the chat I saw on the screen there. Is a person's fire insurance rating affected by distance to a fire station? The answer is yes. But there's a lot more to it than just distance. There is proximity of volunteers, fire hydrants, how close they are. Some of Fire District 4 is, well, there's a Washington State Ratings Bureau, and they come in and tell you what your fire rating is for insurance purposes. And they come in and they survey the district and they say, okay, this area here, and in Fire District 4, we have an area that is a 6. And we have some areas that are 7s, some 8s, and we even have a small area that's a 9, which was one of the worst because of the distance from a manned fire station and fire hydrants and all that stuff. So proximity definitely makes a difference, but there are some other factors as well.
So Curt, is it time for you to dust off that briefing again? Or, to begin at the county level, talking amongst the fire commissioners? I know you have an organization. Is it time to bring this up again and see if some of the commissioners are, some of the fire districts are ready to combine?
That's what some of us are thinking, that at the very least, whether we do our dog and pony show again or just have one-on-one contact, we have some ideas right now of directions we might want to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Curt, this is kind of a stupid question, but where's a fire hydrant? I've never seen a fire hydrant out here in the country.
There's a bunch of them around the casino.
Oh.
And we actually have, and there's fire hydrants in Shadowwood,
Oh.
Fawn Lake. So we do have some areas. We also have a fire hydrant right in front of the station on Old Olympic Highway down there in Camilchi.
What are they? Just wells?
A
Where
fire
do-
hydrant is attached to a large water system with a big storage tank capacity.
Okay. So it'd have to be in a community that had a water system.
Yeah, it'd be cost prohibitive to put up your own fire hydrant. Well, it's not impossible, but yeah, expensive. So, any other questions?
I have another question, or just a comment. When we say fire departments, people think of fires, right? But really,
Yeah.
like you say, it's really emergency response. And I think you would maybe get more public support if it was more named or identified. You identified yourself not just as fire, but as emergency response. I'm just saying this is a PR kind of a
Sure.
position.
And in many departments that have combined and changed call themselves fire and rescue because it kind of rolls off the tongue nicely, like West Mason Fire and Rescue, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue.
If you call for an ambulance, you're gonna get the fire department, right?
Yes,
So it's almost
we no longer have a private ambulance company
more private
in
ambulance.
Mason
Okay.
County. They used to run the hearses out to transport people to the hospital, which is a little bit unnerving, but yeah, early on, before emergency medical services really got going, before Ron Pinnell, our good friend Ron Pinnell, started Mason County Ambulance Company. Before then, it was, funeral homes and hospitals, and Ron really did the county a big service by starting the ambulance company for us. That ambulance company eventually became part of Central Mason Fire Authority, which does not include the city of Shelton, but the city of Shelton contracts with Central Mason for fire service. City of Shelton pays money to Central Mason to provide the fire service for them, and they occupy the station downtown.
Do you provide the public with information on how to protect their property from fire?
We have handouts and we have a website. We go to our school district, Southside School District, and give talks to the kids on how they can take care of themselves. and tell their parents what they're doing wrong.
There's no better mouthpiece.
Exactly.
So
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when or if we ever have forest fire in Mason County, a big forest fire, how do you get the state to come in? It's got to be a huge thing. It's not, I mean, all
Correct.
hands on deck, sort of. Who starts all that?
So the fire districts, being always closest to the fires, have a deal with the State Department of Natural Resources. State Department of Natural Resources has dominion over forest fires. But the fire districts all have interlocal agreements with them, and we go out there and get there first because we're closest, we're there. And we fight the fire until DNR can get there with their big mobilization and take over. So we go there first, and after the first hour, they actually pay us to stay there and work on that. And then they get there with their teams. And we have some great leadership in the Department of Natural Resources as far as waging war against fires. They do a really good job. I personally have been part of those mobilizations. I used to go out with my bulldozer and cut fire trail working for the DNR, and it was some pretty exciting work, but their structure is really amazing. I was very pleased to be able to work with them. So DNR is the organization that has dominion over the big fires, but the fire departments get out there first, and sometimes after that first hour, the DNR will hire the departments and actually pay them some money. There's a state rate for a fire engine or a brush engine or a wildland firefighter. I was on a number of fires in Mason County, take the bulldozer out and cut fire trail, and we had helicopters working and got them nipped in the bud. I live rurally also. There's a lot of trees around me, so it's always on my mind that, I want to make sure our wildland response is very robust for sure.
Mary, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Curt, this is great information. I kind of have a combination question around the issue of wildfire and so building codes, wildfire, and home hardening. So kind of my first question is, do you think that people in our community, especially those who are living in the wildland urban interface, are aware of the increasing risk of wildfire in Western Washington, and how are people being informed around the importance of home hardening? I know you have pictures on the Mason County website. I've seen about that, but how are people made aware of they are in a higher risk because climate change, and then also how are building codes, if they are changing in response? For instance, maybe you would not have an okay to build a wooden deck on your home if you lived in the WUI interface area, right? You would use composite materials and a fire hardened roof and vents that would prevent embers from coming in. So all these things that can be done, but only if the homeowner is aware and the building codes are in alignment with those. So I was just curious if you could weigh in about that issue.
Regarding the building codes, they don't take into account how easy a house can catch fire. I have to confess at my own house, because aesthetically I like it. We built it just 9 years ago and we covered it with cedar shingles, which is, of course, one of the most combustible things there are. We have some trees not too far from the house, but I took into consideration prevailing winds and think I'm reasonably safe. But your main question is, well, how do people become aware? And I feel that there's been quite a lot of information just promoted on television news stories. And I guess it's difficult for me to recall where I get all my information because I've had so much fire information given to me over so many years. But there's been a lot of news coverage of the fires in California, for example, that really wipe out communities. And I know they've talked a lot about the interface and what you should do to keep your house safe. The building codes, I don't think, are doing it at all. I guess the greatest way to reach people still is television and radio and websites. So I guess we've got more work to do on that, Sherry.
Thanks, Curt. Well, that's another kind of a segue into could league be another avenue to help bring home the idea that we're in the Western Washington, we haven't usually thought about us being as, wildfire being not an issue, but with climate change, it will increase. We know that's happening.
Yes.
And so how can we help our neighbors be prepared? And it seems like League is all about educating and advocating. So we want to educate our neighbors so they're prepared. And so maybe we could talk about as a league if that's something we want to do. But, I'm in a very rural part of the county here, out on Lurcher Road. And I talk to my neighbors all the time about how we're going to prepare as neighbors to support each other, right? But I know that communities are having those same conversations. And I'm very concerned that people not aware of the risk for wildfire increasing. And, I don't know. Anyway, I'm babbling. I'm just really concerned our neighbors don't know the risk and they're not being prepared adequately.
And I think part of that is the burn bans. And I know that people around here don't recognize them, don't adhere to the burn bans. Yeah, I mean, you can tell when there's smoke in the air that somebody's burning garbage or somebody's burning a pile out there that they shouldn't be burning at that time. And, I suppose I just had the thought of, what Curt said, talking to your fire commissioner and making them aware that they may not be out there in the neighborhoods because we're so far from each other, to oversee what neighbors are doing. And, that's just a small thing that you can do.
So regarding educating people, we're in Mason County. And we have a lot of rather independent thinking people here that want to go their own way and don't care what others think. And it's going to be hard to change their attitudes. But as far as education, District 4 has a website. Not too many people look at it, but some. And we have some information on how to protect your home. But I'm not quite sure how to get people to look at that information. We have a lot of media available. We have radio, sort of, and we have a newspaper once a week that we could put some information into.
And the schools.
And the schools. Yeah, schools would be definitely our future for learning about how to keep yourself safe. I mentioned early on that, yeah, my family got completely burned out, 1902. Big wildfire covered a great deal of Mason County, the west end. And my grandmother, I was talking to her many years ago, and she recalled the dark day where they never saw the sun because the smoke was so thick everywhere. And the animals were all freaked out, and they made quite a big deal about it. So it has happened before. And every year I think about it personally, am I prepared, if this happens? But not everybody thinks about that. I guess I'm more sensitive to it because of my experience with fire and departments. So how do we lead the horse to water and make him drink?
Was that fire in the Skoke Valley, was it a genuine forest fire up in the hills that came down, or was it somebody's home that started burning?
This was out at Matlock, where my family was in 1902, about a mile from Merriam Night School. And I don't know the particulars of how it started or if they even knew how it started, but it was a hot, dry summer and something got going. There were no fire departments. There were logging crews, that would try and put out something locally, but it